The Business Simplicity Podcast, where leaders share their most successful strategies and the failures that inspired them, so business owners and managers can avoid the suffering and reap the benefits. With your host, Chris Parker.
And welcome to the Business Simplicity Podcast. I'm Chris Parker, and this is episode 140. It is a delightfully special episode. So I'm having a conversation again with Kristjan Knigge. And Kristjan, in addition to being an award-winning director, is also the co-conspirator on this podcast. And so we felt it was particularly appropriate to start the new format, the new direction with a conversation between the two of us. So welcome, everyone, and welcome, Kristjan. I'd love it if you could kick us off with sharing in the briefest way possible. What is it that you do, Kristjan?
What is it that I do? I'm a filmmaker. That's the briefest version is I'm a filmmaker. I love making films. Any film, commercial, fiction, experimental, long form, short form, filmmaker.
And filmmaker. And can you expand slightly for people on who might not know what filmmaker is?
Too brief? Can it be too brief? Filmmaker. Well, film director is another way of saying it, although I do have a broader skill set, as do most modern filmmakers. Often we do filming and editing and all sorts of things ourselves. But that's what it is. Filmmaker is somebody who creates stories that are audio, visual, moving pictures with sound. Of course, sometimes you do some stuff without sound, but or sometimes you do a podcast like this, but we happen to have a podcast with some video attached. For the people who are just listening to this, there is also video, so you can see our lovely faces if you want.
Yeah. But
not if you're driving.
Please, not if you're driving.
Exactly.
And for this podcast and the creative approach has really come from, in a lot of ways, our relationship in filmmaking. I've been honored to be a producer on a number of your projects and future projects. So, but moving on, I'm curious in your mind, and I'm fascinated to see what your answer is on this, is filmmaking, particularly in features, you've described to me as a marathon in the past, a lot of time investment, a lot of money investment. What impact do you make with your work?
Oh, that's one of those confronting questions. I think any storyteller, any artist cannot help but make some sort of an impact. The fact that you create something, you create a piece of art or a piece of commercial work and you put it out there, that creates an impact. And if you're lucky, you get to kind of shape a little bit what that impact is. What it is, I don't know. I'd have to go to sort of examples. Like the things that make me most proud of the impact of my work is like, for example, our first feature film, The Right Juice. The premiere of that, the world premiere of The Right Juice, was in Atlanta at the Atlanta Film Festival. And I was there, and it was amazing. And it was wonderful to watch. And it was wonderful to sit in the audience and watch people watch my first feature-length piece of art. And we did the Q&A, and I stood up, and I was very, very proud. It was a very proud moment. I was there with Karen Radzkowski, our first AD, and together we did the Q&A. And there was a lady in the middle of the cinema, and she said, I don't have a question, but I just want to tell you how this movie touched me. We are a Portuguese family, expats. We moved here many years ago. Our son has grown up. He was a teenager and he was with them. Our son grew up here. He has never been to Portugal. He grew up in America. And this movie gave us the chance to show him a little bit about our home country. And the music and the story and the people touched us and makes us, makes me go back. It transports me back to my home for a little bit and allows me to share that. And that really, really touched me. That was amazing, especially as they also shared that they had no idea what movie they were coming to. They had been given, I think they worked for Turner or something, Atlanta, right? So Turner. And they'd just been given Atlanta Film Festival tickets as a sort of, from their work. Here's some tickets, take the family. And they ended up watching this show because they were like, oh, Portugal, that's weird. And they came to watch the movie. So that that's something. I love it when stuff that I make impacts people's lives or touches them in a way. And I'm lucky enough to have a number of examples that I know of that happening. And hopefully, if you're really lucky, there are many, many more examples of people watching your stuff, but you don't know because they've watched it at home or in cinemas where you weren't there. That was rambling.
I love that story, and there's so many other stories that mutual stories we've had around that kind of impact. For me, collaborating with you, what one type of impact is that we're actually creating something. So the act of creating for me is an amazing type of impact. And for the team, the film team can be quite large and broad and spanning a lot of time.
I didn't hear you for a minute there.
Oh.
What did you say? Something, spanning a lot of time.
Let's start that again. Maybe there's a little cut thing.
Yeah.
Well, for me, as I'm reflecting on my collaboration on those films, one of the best types of impact that I like to make is actually with the film team itself. The fact that we've actually created it and actually finished it. And my own measure of success is to actually have it in the cinema and buy that ticket. But it's not so much the ticket; it's to be able to see the reaction of the people watching this and seeing actually what they pull out of it. So it's so The Right Juice. If people haven't found that out there, I hope you do, and I hope you love it and see what impact it has on them. Going a bit deeper into the core question of the new format, which is really around business simplicity. We're going to be traveling the world virtually, asking people who are doing amazing, impactful things, what is it in their work that they have discovered or use as a strategy or tactic to simplify their work? And so the question is, what is something that you can recommend or share that has allowed you to simplify your work potentially dramatically?
Another one of those questions. I think like something that took a long time to learn and even a much longer time for me to actually implement is preparation. Because I was always averse to preparation because I'm quite spontaneous. I'm quite good at spontaneous problem solving in the moment. So I could always rely on myself to just figure it out in the moment. But the more I learn, the more I discover that is not necessarily the most efficient or best way to get things done. And also you're often figuring out a compromise because you don't have the means, the people, or the time to actually do the best solution. You always come up with the best solution for the situation, but the best solution for the situation or for the moment is not necessarily the best solution that it could have been. So preparing has allowed me to simplify, to simplify, like a shoot. Like we're out on a shoot. The better I prepare that shoot, as far as blocking, as far as thinking about potential hazard, the better I prepare, the simpler the shoot day, because then we're just doing the plan. And if I don't have a spontaneous creative thought in the moment, I can just fall back on the plan. So that's kind of a long-term thing that I'm still learning. I still sometimes find myself winging it a little bit in prep. But I'm trying to get better at it by just prepping everything. I have a meeting tomorrow. Prep it. I'm nowadays that guy that when you join the Zoom meeting, there's somebody already there. It's me, because I've gone in 5 minutes before and checked my camera and checked that the sound is working and checked that the lights are on. Because I like that simplification. I like the fact that the meeting doesn't begin with, I can't hear you. Are you there? Check the button for your camera. I like just getting into it. And that's kind of a very small version of it, but going all the way up to, prepping for shoots, prepping for everything. Preparation simplifies. Who'd have thunk? Well,
The thing that comes in my mind when you say that is there must be a balance between that preparation and that improvisation. I guess you can't package creativity up front. So I'm curious, how do you balance on a film shoot, having everything nailed up front and then just executing, as well as keeping things flexible and fluid, or are you saying you're trying to get away from the improvisation aspect?
No. I'm actually trying to create freedom for creativity and expression and improvisation. Because if you're very unprepared, or if you're going into situations kind of, we'll wing it, a lot of your creativity is going into just making it happen at all. A lot of the creative juices are flowing in order to solve a problem, solve why it's not working, or solve, can we do something at all? Whereas if you prepare, if you have things set up, if you're good to go, if you have a plan, then the creative juices can go to making it better, making it more awesome, finding the most awesome version of what you're trying to do. And I think that's a much better place for your creativity to go, is so we know what we want to achieve. We know what we want to do. We want to get a portrait of this person. We want to get to know this character. And we're going to do that through these and these and these and these scenes. And we're going to have this character in these and these and these locations. And we have prepared. We know how to get to the location. We're not going to be running out of time in trying to find the location. All these things prepared. When we get there, and then suddenly we find out, but what is the best way of lighting it? What is the most creative way of using a camera movement or whatever? That's what I'm trying to do. A cameraman once said to me, and this was a wonderful lesson in simplicity. A cameraman once said to me, his name is Simon Glaser, and he said, this is how we work together. He told me, you draw the boundaries of the field. It was a football metaphor. He said, you draw the sidelines, and I get to play football on that whole pitch. I get to play on the whole pitch. But you got to give me those boundaries, because if you don't give me any boundaries, then everything is possible, and therefore nothing is possible. And I thought that was a great way of simplifying this thing. So my prep was to make sure that those boundaries, I'm drawing boxes. That's really weird. It's like, think outside the box by drawing a box. Those boundaries, the sidelines of the pitch, the better I had defined them, the more clear the rules of engagement, the rules of the game were, the more freedom I was giving the cameraman, Simon, to go and create and to go and put his creativity and his knowledge and his skill set into making beautiful shots or awesome camera moves or whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. So that was a really, really good lesson in simplicity. Preparation.
I love it. I'm going to ask you in a bit, is there an example of when it's gone terribly wrong? But the
most of my shoots ever.
Well, I think the reason I love it is unexpectedly, I think you captured one of the main principles of my values as a leader and a manager, where what I primarily seek out to do is to create the space for people to communicate better, and to remove that sort of cognitive weight of confusion and I don't know who's doing what and I don't know why I'm here. You can call it a box. Sometimes I call it a house. We put, this is the direction we're going, is the roof. We have some boundaries on the side, and we've got all the tools and supports that should all work seamlessly. And the whole purpose of that is to create that space for incredible people to do incredible things. And I'm sure in your life, as in my life, that doesn't work perfectly all the time. So I'm curious, is there a moment where it's gone disastrously wrong that really underpinned this, I guess, principle for you?
As in somewhere where we didn't prepare and it just didn't work? Disastrously wrong is difficult. A couple of examples come to mind, but not really for sharing because other people are involved. I think an example would be, which was quite a painful example, was Silence Undone, which you also produced on. This was partly my prep, but mainly the prep of one of the teams, one of the departments involved, failed to prep and didn't communicate that they weren't prepped. And it almost cost us the whole movie. It almost made us have to say on day one of the shoot, okay, we're pulling the plug and we're going to see how we can come back to this. And the problem with that is sometimes when you pull the plug on, certainly if it's an artistic endeavor, it wasn't a commercial endeavor, there wasn't a huge funding behind it. When you pull the plug on something like that, there's a good chance that you'll never be able to get the momentum back up again, because those projects come together. We did crowdfunding, and we would, working under the blessing of a lot of people's volunteer time and effort. If you pull the plug on that, often you ain't getting that momentum back. So either it'll never happen or it won't happen with the same sort of energy and vibe. And that was really, really tough. And that really hammered home about prep, and also about how if the actual doing of the preparation is somebody else, or is another unit or another team or another department, there's still something you can be doing about that. Because if I was totally honest with myself, I had feared that this was happening, and I hadn't enough taken action to make sure that the prep did get done. I didn't want to hassle them. I didn't want to, I wanted to be the nice guy, and it ended up me having to be really rather unpleasant to get shit done on the shoot, and it cost a huge toll on me as well. I mean, I went into a very wonderful, beautiful film as the director, as the person who had to, kind of steer the ship, and I went into it already completely drained and emotionally whacked and frustrated and annoyed and full of all these very, very negative emotions, and that also had an impact on my functioning and how I was in the team, and it had an impact on the whole team. So it really hammered home prep and honesty about prep. If you're not ready, share that with whoever you're working with, because it's worse if you don't.
Yeah, it's the being critically dependent on another group or a team. But if you're going to do something at scale or large, and have greater impact, then that's almost by definition a requirement. It's for the game. And what I like to celebrate with people is, I just say own it, even if it's not your job. If you own it because you need it, then if everyone's owning it, it will get done. And own it, I don't mean by necessarily do it, but realize, this is something that you need to succeed. So at least own checking in with the people that need to be there, you need to collaborate with. And particularly if you have that spidey sense under, going, something wrong.
It's such a bad feeling when something, when it all goes pear-shaped, and then you have to be honest with yourself, like, I kind of knew this was going to happen, and I didn't there were more steps I could have taken. That's a shitty feeling. That's a really shitty feeling. I hate that. I mean, yeah. Ownership. I think we should do a whole nother video series about ownership, because that is such a tricky concept. I've tried to explain to people, the ownership, which is partly about responsibility and partly about thing, but a lot of people directly go, you mentioned, directly interpret ownership as, that means I have to do it. And I don't want to do it, and therefore, but anyway, I think it's a big old topic that's going to be fun to explore one day.
Unpack that on another episode, but
yeah, I think we should.
But in closing, I just want to express thanks to you, Kristjan, for this is episode 140, going on since early COVID. One of the reasons
this is our third where I'm the guest, isn't it? Something like that.
At least.
I'm going to end up, recycling stories, because I haven't got that much to tell.
Well, there's a lot of stories we haven't shared,
fair enough.
And we'll make new stories again. And Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere, the previous version was really about, inspired by COVID, celebrating people that are doing great things. Also, hopefully bringing them business during a really tough time. We've evolved because the world has evolved. We've become a bit more focused. Now we're the Business Simplicity Podcast, and I love that.
So what is the difference? What's new?
Well,
for all the people who have watched all the 139 Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere podcasts, I wonder if anybody has watched them all, but it would be great, or listened to them all. I hope there are people out there that have.
I know for a fact there are people who have.
Well, your dad, obviously, but sorry.
I think he's one of the people who hasn't, but certainly my brother, Stephen, I know he's listening to this. He's one of the people who also comments back. Hello, Stephen. Well, the Everyday Entrepreneurs Everywhere was very broad. We were bringing in people from every type of background, and I hope to keep a bit of that, but focus a bit more on business.
With the 3 Z's?
Business, yeah, the bee's knees. So really more commercial endeavors, because we were keeping it really quite broad. The previous version, we also went down as many rabbit holes as we could, and we had some really interesting, rich conversations, which needed to happen at the time. However, as
some wonderful weirdness as well.
And we had some wonderful weirdness. We had the whole spectrum. But as Ebullient, my little effort to help companies simplify, and the purpose of my investment in this time to help companies, and that means the people in companies simplify, is really to help work suck less. Because if you can make things more easy, clear, effective, productive, more fun, then work sucks less. And quite frankly, we can have a happier experience with that 50% or 75% of our lifetime.
So wait a minute. So the mission is make work suck less?
Yes, absolutely.
I can get behind that. Does it say that on the website?
No.
Because did you just spontaneously come up with the best tagline ever?
Let's make work suck less.
I love it.
And I think if you take a disciplined approach to simplicity, business simplicity, and that doesn't mean it's easy. It can be quite challenging and hard and confronting, because you have to look at your own preconceived notions, etc. Then that's an enriching experience. You learn, I learn, we learn, we grow together. And I think, growing and learning and having those experiences, that I think is really what makes work suck less. So let's do more of that.
All right.
So the podcast is now leaning into that. Let's talk about business simplicity. And the question, which is really, and this is also very selfishly for me, I want to know from incredible people what tactics and strategies they use to simplify their business and suck a little bit less, because I can benefit from that. And that's enough. However, I think there's quite a few other people who also are quite interested in this. So
let's find out.
Let's have this conversation, because I think we have, my goal is to have enriching conversations with incredible people who are doing interesting things. That is a primary purpose. It's also a purpose to share that, and I would love it if this grows. And I'm not sure if I'm looking for the number of people, but if we're reaching people who are really open to discover and learn and play with this, then I think we're doing our job. So
qualitative, not necessarily quantitative.
Yeah. Cool. Now, how to measure that, we'll figure that out later. But anyhow, So let's wrap up. The contact details for Kristjan are all in the show notes. So follow the links below if you're on YouTube or Spotify or wherever else you're listening to this. Please share and enjoy. And something that I really want to celebrate, if you're going through life and work and there's a problem of complexity or some sort of complication, it would be lovely if you think to yourself, if this was simple, what would it look like? And that might open up some new ideas. So, Kristjan, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening. Download the Simplicity Toolkit from ebullient.com to discover the power of the Simplicity Scan and Sprint. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player.